I think people here are materially rich, but psychically poor on average. Of course. And that's why I really resonated with the work that you and Kejal and Mohit are doing with the ecosystem is extremely important. Because when you look at the meta crisis, the majority of people get addicted to facts and information. And I want to know more about oil depletion or what Russia's doing or this new technology or the latest climate models. And when I met the three of you, you're about the foundational relationships between humans and being healthy, fully, horizontally and vertically, behaviorally stacked human beings, and then going outward from there and involving others. And since I was in India, which was exactly a year ago today, I've realized that that is at the core of responses to the meta crisis.
Welcome to the Bodhi Sangha podcast, where we come together to listen, learn, and support each other in uncertain times. We're a community exploring how to face today's challenges with wisdom, trust, and care. Join us as we walk this journey of change, rooted in connection and guided by life's deeper wisdom.
Namaste, Nate, and welcome to our inaugural podcast.
Namaste, my friend. Good to see you, Avi.
Yes, it's really a delight to be with you in this podcast and to start off a series of conversations with someone like you. Uh, I thought I'll start with introducing you, Nate, which is always challenging because there are so many facets to you. Uh, but
Please be brief.
Well, I would say that in any voice, in any conversation about the future today, I think you're one of the voices that's present, right? As one of the voices. So I see you as somebody really concerned about humanity's future and actively participating in shaping that conversation. Um, but yeah, I think I'm sharing from what I know of you. So your career at Wall Street, and then from there moving on with a disillusionment. Thank God for that. And from there, going deeper into the inquiry of human behavior, your PhD in natural resources, and then the amazing podcast that you host, The Great Simplification, and your teaching and speaking at various places. So there's a lot there. So yeah, I'm so privileged to be speaking to you. And yeah, and I cannot not introduce the whole personal side of meeting you. I think when I first met you, there was like I was scared, like saying, "Oh, God, I'm going to meet a giant, like a literally intellectual giant." And what I met was a beautiful, genuine human being. So that
What
was
you
a
met
delight.
was actually a physical giant at 275 pounds and 6'6". Intellectual, not so much.
Great, Nate. So Nate, let's get into a little bit about you because we felt that getting to know you better would be lovely and would help us understand where you're coming from. If that's okay, I would like to launch it to that.
It's really, I mean, let's do that quickly. This isn't about me. I've just spent 25 years of my life understanding the human predicament, how the foundational biophysical economy of energy, technology, resources, money fit together with evolutionary psychology and human individual and aggregate behavior and our brains. And then all that is underpinned by ecology and the environment. It seems kind of common sense that we weren't taught these things. So I'm just, I'm synthesizing the ideas of many, many other people. And I just have kind of I deeply care, as you said, about um, changing the initial conditions of the future on many different levels to make the future better than the default. And so I'm just trying to shout to the world of what's coming and that people change what they're doing or at least think about it or at least be better people during these times. So this is really not about me. There's very little original in what I'm saying. I'm just packaging all the science into a story that connects all the dots and explains our time, what the global human ecosystem and natural world ecosystems are like in 2025.
Sounds great. I think that answers what you're really trying to do and how you do it. So maybe I'll cut the chase, I think, and come down to the topic of this podcast, the focus of this podcast, which is India and the meta crisis in India. So curious about how do you look at the Indian context from your vantage view? What stands out to you about our context here?
So I've spent a lot of time understanding the constraints that humanity faces because a lot of our cultural stories use narrow boundaries instead of wide boundaries, and using a narrow boundary like with blinders on, you're just looking at technology is going to do all these wonderful things, but they don't look at the impacts of the technology or things outside of the market or outside of the human sphere. So I'm no expert on what to do. I'm more of a, uh, somewhat fluent observer of the constraints that limit what some of the
Sure.
cultural things that
And
our leaders and our television commercials are talking about. With respect to India, it's even more difficult than that. I've only been to India once, which is when I met you. Fell in love with India. It's a little awkward for me, someone in the United States and the global north who's responsible for 90% of the burning of fossil fuels that's going to lead to a warmer world, and especially including the Indian subcontinent, to give advice to people in India on the meta crisis. So there's a little bit of hubris and uncomfortableness about that. And I also don't know, I'm not an expert in India. I have some ideas on directionally what people like yourselves at Ecosystem, your other organizations are doing, and what things people are working on that we don't really need more people working on, and what things are not yet covered. I think the main premise is that my analysis of the global economy is that humans in our modern culture self-organize as individuals, as families, as small businesses, as companies, as nation states in order to maximize profits. And the profits are denominated by dollars or rupees, or Oroville dollars. And then they are tethered to energy and tethered to ecosystem impact. And we're just blindly going forward and have a metabolism like economic superorganism that we don't, there, no one is calling the shots, and we're just stumbling forward, fueling more fuel into the runaway train. I think India and its peoples are not yet fully swallowed by this economic superorganism. You have centuries and millennia of culture and ethic and a certain way of looking at the world. I think the superorganism is certainly has its tentacles within India, with the advertising and the YouTube videos of gin rummy, and I forgot the ones that I
wow.
saw when I was in Oroville. Um, but I think that's a strength because relative to other countries in the world, you have this Indic wisdom and ethos that is still at the core of who you are in everyday life. And the superorganism has fully soaked into the American psyche, not so much yet in India. So I think there are opportunities there for cultural stories and cultural initiatives to do things differently. And then obviously, and the reason I'm willing to be on this show, other than you and Mohit and Kajal are friends of mine, is I actually think India can play a role in the larger story of humanity, because we are now at a species level conversation. We are the first generation of our kind, and there are 8,000 million of you and me, Abhishek. We're the first generation of our kind to know where we came from, We came from our ancestral hominids who came from pre-hominids who all the way back, and we're a product of all these ancestors. We know where we came from, what we need, what we're doing, what our impacts are, what our natural resource sink and source balance sheet are. Um, what is our deep kernel of humanity? What are the pathways forward? We're able to see this at a species level now. And so I think India can and must play a role in that conversation. I mean, 20% of the world's population are people living in India, plus or minus.
Definitely, Nate. I think one question I wonder about, Nate, is when does India or any nation state become a narrow boundary and when does it become a context? Like, when am I the citizen of the world and when am I located in Indian culture? And really, how do I see these issues? Because I find myself kind of oscillating between citizen of the world and rooted in the Indian context. So I don't know if, yeah, I think that's a question I grapple with.
I think it's like looking at that picture where there's this dancer, or it's a pic of profile of the face of an old woman. It's like that. You're both depending on the context. Right now, talking with me, you are a citizen of the world, as am I. But then later in this conversation, you're going to be someone that embodies the Indic ethos and culture of living in India. So I think it's both. But where I thought you were going with that question, and so I'll briefly answer a question that you didn't ask, um, is the economic superorganism is so powerful that it sucks in things from the periphery into the center. And it's like obligatory technology. In our ancestral past, if there were 10 cultures and one of them invented a plow to plow the land, eventually the others would have to do the same thing. Otherwise, they would have been outcompeted and ceased to exist. I think artificial intelligence is that now in the world. It's an obligatory technology that everyone, including uh, the elites in India, are going towards. So I think India has potentially some resistance potential to this obligatory technology and this economic superorganism that other countries don't. And I don't know what that looks like, but I felt it when I was there. So I'll just stop there and we can continue.
I'm curious about when you say the resistance, the potential to resist, and you also referred to when you were here. So I was curious what stood out for you when you were here, and how did you look at the work we're doing, and what makes you say that there is some resistance potential in this land?
Well, as you know, most of the 6 weeks I was there, I wasn't really in India. I was in Oroville, which is a pretty unique place. I mean, I went to Pondicherry a few times to buy those really good sweets. We don't have sweets like that in the USA. Um, so my experience is Oroville, as you remember. But people there were living on a tiny fraction of what people do in the United States. Amazing food available at all times. Um, almost everyone, either walked or rode electric bikes, and there were a few motorcycles, very few cars. Um, and there were birds and forests, and there was just a respect and a living in the moment feeling. And I'll share this example. I don't know that I told you this before, but the night I left, all the people that were affiliated with our group and some others, like in the hospice area that we were staying, they surrounded me in a circle in a hug, which was very nice. But they wouldn't let go. They like moved the group hug to the taxi cab, and they wouldn't let go. They hugged me for like 5 minutes. And then I flew home to the United States, and my car had been parked in distant parking because I was gone for 6 weeks. And so we took a shuttle, a little bus, to this remote parking lot. There were 14 of us on this bus. No one said a word for an hour. We all looked at our phones. No one said a single word to each other. That never would have happened in India. So there's a fabric of social capital that is embedded in your culture that exists. It's complex. It's unusual. There are problems. There are inequality issues, as there are everywhere. But this deep recognition and embodiment of music and food and social capital and nature. In my mind, before I went to India, I'm like, oh my God, they have 1.5 billion people on a country that's a third the size of the United States. There's no nature there. Not only was there nature there, tigers, but the hundreds of birds that I recorded and photographed when I was in Tamil Nadu. But the ethic of the people in India about the importance of the natural world really surprised me, and inspired me. I mean, yes, there is more encroachment of humans on the natural world in India than the United States because it's 15 times more population dense. But the awareness of the environment, in many ways, exceeds that of the United States. Certainly, with the indigenous tribes and the hill people and the people that doing nature conservation work, et cetera. So, yeah, I can't put my finger on it, Abby, and I don't want to be so arrogant to say that I understand India, but it felt more aligned with human history and maybe human futures, was my thought. Now, that's on the human experience part, but then at the same time, there were um, giant heaps of plastic that were burned every couple days, and the toxic fumes. There are 50 to 60 million stray dogs in India out of 1 billion total dogs in the world. By the way, I really miss my dogs that were my friends in Oroville. So I kind of adopted 3 of them. It's just like it was like a different planet to me. So you have a lot of uphill struggles coming in the nation of India. There's going to be immigration and migration due to increased standard deviation of weather events, as well as a gradually but inexorably higher heat coupled with humidity. That means some places that have thriving populations now will become uninhabitable by 2050. There is the inequality thing. India imports the majority of your oil, and that's tenuous. AI is going to accelerate wealth inequality, probably. I mean, there are a lot of the meaning crisis. What is the meaning in your life? That is probably less of an issue in India than it is in North America. I think people here are materially rich, but psychically poor on average. On average, of course. And that's why I really resonated with the work that you and Kejal and Mohit are doing with the ecosystem is extremely important. Because when you look at the meta crisis, a lot of people tend to, and I'm sorry that I'm just talking, but I
No,
just
no,
had
please.
coffee. This is my
Yeah.
morning time. The majority of people get addicted to facts and information. And I want to know more about oil depletion or what Russia's doing or this new technology or the latest climate models. And when I met the 3 of you, you're about the foundational relationships between humans and being healthy, fully horizontally and vertically behaviorally stacked human beings, and then going outward from there and involving others. And since I was in India, which was exactly a year ago today, I've realized that that is at the core of responses to the meta crisis. We have to find people that are like interested, pro-social, care about the future, and are a little bit aware of the issues. Then you organize with those people and you build community and bonds and social capital and trust. The way that I visually and in my body felt between you and Mohit and Kejal. Then once you have that bond and the calming of the frenetic nervous systems in our bodies, and you're just kind of aligned as an adult, aware Homo sapiens, then you branch out and roll your sleeves up and play a role in the meta crisis. So I didn't used to think that. I thought that just telling people more about facts and then naturally we would respond in the right way. And I was wrong about that.
Thanks for that. It's nice to be seen, Nate, honestly, and it's we feel curious about how we seem to somebody looking at us. And I resonate. I mean, one
I saw
question.
it. I saw it right away. Not right away, because for the first 3 or 4 minutes when you were talking, I'm like, "Oh my god, this guy talks a lot." And then you went on like 45 minutes, but then I began to feel what you were saying, and you were demonstrating the concepts you of your values, and it really landed for me.
That's very nice. That's nice to hear. Thank you. Receiving that. Nate, when I place myself in urban India and there is rural India which consumes much lesser than me. So on one end, I can look at the US and the global north and kind of say, hey, you guys are consuming, we are doing less, but I'm doing it vis-a-vis rural India. How does one reconcile? What's the moral stand? What do we do? Like yeah,
It's a really difficult question, and it's one that I wrestle with a lot. I come from a poor family in the United States. My dad ended up going to college and going to medical school, and he was a doctor, but all of his brothers just worked in the paper mills. And my cousins, and I have like 35 first cousins, they're just normal people. They're teachers and coaches. They don't have any money. They are Americans. So, from the perspective of someone in India, those people live in the United States, but they're just going through their lives trying to be good people. And I think that's the case of most people in the world. And we have these power structures that are an externality of the metabolism of 8 billion humans finding this huge amount of fossilized magic in the form of coal, oil, and natural gas for what it does for us. And it just ripples through the world in a power law. So, to answer your question, again, a big caveat here is I am much better at describing the problem than offering solutions. I don't think we're going to solve for equality or fairness or justice. I just don't think so. I think we have to keep fighting it for it, kind of asymptotically. But I think we can have kindness and empathy at all times. And I think this is my own conclusion and my current plan is when I encounter someone or a situation where there's suffering, and I expect we're all going to encounter that much more in the future than we do today, you give your full attention to it in the moment, um, and maybe do something about it. But you give your full attention, don't look away, face it, look the person in the eye, listen to them. But then you have to have some sort of um, buffers to protect yourself, because if you went and tried to help the people in rural India every day, you couldn't do the work. The really important work you're doing at ecosystem is extremely important. So this is a moment of suffering. I am acknowledging it. I'm with it. I'm trying to help maybe if I can. Then I let it pass through me and I go on to my next thing. I think if we say there's injustices and inequality in the world, we would spend the rest of our lives fighting that battle and we would lose. So I think find something that is within your purvey of your skill set of helping the future of Pondicherry or Delhi or India or your own neighborhood in one of those cities or the world or the tigers or the many, many beautiful birds in Tamil Nadu. I mean, whatever you is your thing, focus on that and have kindness and empathy in between.
and and Nate, how does one cope with the feeling of being small and limited in face of these large forces and really like I don't know, I wonder the sense of overwhelm that comes in once in a while. a feeling of wondering what is the best we can do as a generation at this critical time. Like, yeah, I wonder about some of those things as well, and I'm curious. I'm sure you wrestle with them daily.
So we face climate change, biodiversity loss, energy depletion, poverty, inequality, polarization, misinformation in the media, all the things that comprise the meta crisis. And I think the derivative of all those things is another thing we face, which is apathy and a lack of agency, which you just described. Um, I don't feel that anymore because I have a podcast and I have a wide group of really great humans, including yourself, Mohit, and Kajal around the world that I know are simultaneously, even if I don't talk to them in a few months, working on these things. So I think you have to ask yourself, what is it that's important to you and gives you meaning? And if it doesn't, then you really need to have conversations with yourself about what does give you meaning, and work towards that, because there are a million things that need little to a lot help. It might be so much as changing the little area in your courtyard so that more pollinators and insects can be there, a small thing like that. It might be inventing some technology that isn't flashy and could be used today, but might, like in Oroville, there's a company that turns soil into bricks, to build with. I mean, there's a million different possible outcomes. I mean, here's an example that I give in some of my presentations. I wrote 3 books with a guy named DJ White. He was one of the early people at Greenpeace, and he ran an organization called Earth Trust. But when he was 21, he lived in the state of Indiana, which is in the middle of the United States, and he was a geologist, like working with rocks and oil. But all he knew at that point is that he loved whales and dolphins. But there were no whales and dolphins in the middle of the United States. So he bought a one-way ticket to Hawaii and he volunteered to clean out the dolphin poop in the aquarium. And 10 years later, until today, he became the single most effective ocean environmental activist of our time. He stopped a dolphin drive kill in Taiwan. He made dolphin safe tuna with StarKist. He had tons of environmental success stories to his name, all because he didn't know what he wanted to do, but he took a single step in a direction that something called to him. And I think that applies to all of us. We just take a little step in the direction of something that gives us meaning. And I can't, it would be way too hubristic for me to give suggestions to your listeners, but because they're all different. But I'm sure maybe the seed of some idea was just sprouted in some of their minds, I hope.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, Nate, you personify this one step to the other, leading to a whole journey, because from your whole journey itself, and today I see you as somebody who's speaking to different worlds simultaneously and synthesizing, and like, so I feel you personify that whole journey itself, right? One step at a time to this amazing intersection, right, of all these energies and ideas. So yeah, curious, what do you
Thank
have to
you.
say standing across all these groups? I'm sure you speak to scientists and academicians and business people and
Yeah.
us. So yeah,
That's
curious.
actually I think it's one of the hardest things of this work. Is this isn't a single issue. We're not dealing with poverty. Okay, let's talk about poverty. We're not dealing with climate change. Okay, let's get all the people that care about climate change into the room and let's talk and figure out answers. We're talking about all of it, how everything fits together. So there are different stakeholders, different belief systems, different politics, and it's really difficult. So I have found, and as a young, just starting out podcast host, I will give you this advice. I have found after 3 years that, of course, my initial intent was to share facts about the world and about the oceans and the biodiversity and oil depletion and nuclear weapons and all those things, and to share those with my viewers so they would be more informed. That's true, but it's really only the proximate goal of this work. I think the ultimate goal is to model how humans, in this case, you and I, have a discourse about these very difficult, complex, unanswerable, really. There are no solutions to what we face. There are responses. How we do that in a civil, respectful, curious, open-minded, non-deterministic way, because that is going to be at the core of the response set in the future. So I no longer really think about left or right, and I don't know what the political situation is in India. In the United States, there's the Democrats and the Republicans. I no longer think of it that way. I think of people as narrow boundary thinkers or wide boundary thinkers, or linear thinkers or systemic thinkers, or left brain, fact led or heart led. And I think the answers, the things that we do in your country and in mine that result in better futures than the default are not going to be on the right or on the left. They're going to be post-partisan, because the future that we face can't be solved by one political party. We have some sort of a new way of having discourse about this. Because one of those paths, if all the Democrats take over and decide everything, or if all the Republicans take over and decide everything, those are dystopic futures, in my opinion.
That's a nice vision for something new to emerge, is what I'm hearing, rather than just a partisan thing to something more integral or I don't know, more
Now,
holistic, I
how
guess.
that comes about, I don't know, but
Oh,
I think that's pretty important.
I was just going to ask you how it comes about, but let me reframe that question, Nate. What are the roadblocks? Like, what is holding us back from reaching full potential, full throttle, and saying, "Hey, this is the challenge. Let's switch. Like, let's wake up tomorrow into a post-partisan response." Like, what are these barriers? Where are we getting stuck?
I will answer your question with a question. What do you think the barriers are, Abhi? And then I'll give you my opinion.
I, I mean, I would look at it as Moloch or Kalyug. I feel like we're all stuck into this loop where nobody wants what's happening, but everybody's stuck doing what they're doing. I guess that's my simplest kind of yeah sense.
Okay, so um, I mean, the reason I asked you is because I think your work is at the core of unblocking the roadblock, because it starts with human relationships and social capital. But I think the real roadblock is we face a technology trap and a social trap. And each of us, unless you're a sociopath, is wearing three hats simultaneously. We wear one hat, which is we have a boss and we have a job and we have a paycheck and we have investments, or we have to be part of the economic system. And the second hat is we want to be a good family member and friend and daughter and husband and father and community member and do good things for our family. And then the third hat, for many of us, most of us, I would like to think, is we want to be a good steward of the world for our descendants, and the natural world. The problem is that the economic superorganism doesn't let us wear those second and third hats. It forces us to wear that first hat. And so we're in this social trap that is also a little bit of a collective action problem and a prisoner's dilemma, that once you understand the meta crisis, if we all understood the meta crisis, the correct response would be to, on average in the world, use less resources. After basic needs are met, most of the best things in life are free, anyways. Um, but there's a recognition that not everyone is going to do that. So the response is to do what's best for me and my family first, and everyone pursues that, and so we're in this. That's what's causing this snowball to spiral out of control. So the constraints ultimately are the prices and incentives of our culture. The prices of everything we buy don't include the negative externalities of carbon being absorbed by the oceans and the atmosphere, or the loss of species and forest cover and soil and endocrine disrupting chemicals in the plastics and all that. They're not included in the prices of our goods. And 85% of our energy is fossil and is depleting rapidly. And we are, as a culture, treating it as if it were interest, when it's really the bank account that we're drawing down millions of times faster than it was built up. So the ultimate roadblock is the institutions, the cultural aspirations, and the prices, and the self-organization of structures like corporations. I don't blame the people at Exxon for climate change. I don't blame the people at Walmart or Home Depot or whatever the Indian equivalent is for getting rid of the mom and pop shops that were more sustainable in the past. These structures self-emerged in our economic systems that gave the rights of people to these corporations, and they're machines, really. So I I think that the roadblocks are incentives, structures, and ultimately our values. And I think those are all going to change. They're up for change now. Our current system, I don't know what's going to happen in the future, but our current system has an expiration date. It is patently unsustainable in the current arrangement.
This podcast, Nate, a lot of us who listen to this podcast are from the social change space, the development sector. People are doing what they can. So curious, what would you kind of say to, I mean, resist, cooperate? I don't know. I'm curious of what would your message to the viewers go?
In India,
And particularly in the development, not-for-profit sector, the social change sector, philanthropists, grassroots volunteers, NGO leaders.
yeah. So India has some constraints and some opportunities unique to India. The constraints are climate and wet bulb temperature are going to affect you as a nation more and faster than some areas in the world. You have a high population density, you have a low GDP per capita relative to the global north. There's pollution, there's a lot of poverty. Increasingly, there's diabetes and the metabolic health aspects of the economic superorganism. On the other side, the benefits and opportunities you have is you're largely food independent. You have a huge labor pool. You have a cultural history and deference to authority that the United States does not have. As we mentioned earlier, you have the Indic wisdom and ethos. You have such a warm, beautiful culture, and you have a lot of nature and tigers and birds and forests, surprisingly much for the size of the country. So I think there are a lot of things. I feel I've never said this on a podcast, so I hope I don't get canceled or idlis thrown at me over the ocean. Um, I think there are a lot of people that look at the world through a postmodern lens where they see what's happening in the world through their eyes. They're like a fish swimming in water, and they're seeing all the bad things that happen in the world, and they're blaming this or that. What I'm trying to describe with the system synthesis is the water. And so I think we have to look 2 or 3 steps ahead at and have some equanimity and not blame, but like what can be done. And so I think in India the things that are probably already being done, but don't necessarily need more is aspiring to lifestyles of the United States, which, by the way, most people in the United States are not happy or healthy, except maybe the top 10%. Blaming the global north for climate and the impacts, it is a fact that the global north is responsible for 90% of the emissions that are leading to climate change. But if you focus on that blame, you don't get to the deeper spiritual type of work that you're doing with the ecosystem towards actual responses that are going to help. So I think, what do we do? The world is unstable. I think globalization, supported by economic growth, supported by cheap and available credit, supported by just-in-time supply chains and very cheap oil and energy, has an expiration date. So I think localizing and regionalizing supply chains is important. I think we tend to look at technology as things to improve human comfort and convenience and distraction and novelty. And I think we have to look 2 or 3 steps ahead at what type of technology is actually going to improve human futures in India. And it's not the type that we necessarily think of. I think we're going to have a lot of struggling, suffering people. So to have local, I like to say, libraries of healing, where we have food and music and assistance for people, especially cooling. I think you're going to have areas that um, help people deal with heat, and not everyone is going to be able to afford fans or um, air conditioning. I think people really need to think about how that's going to be organized in India. I think the concept of himsma or nonviolence. Gandhi, confronted the British Empire with that attitude. What sort of emergent cultural response in India could rhyme with what Gandhi did towards the global economic superorganism that we're all a part of? But I think at the core is, and I've learned this recently. 2 weeks ago, I was at a party, and that there were 50 people that listened to the podcast, and the party was held for me because they wanted to show their appreciation and support. And we stayed up till like 3 in the morning. And the next morning we had breakfast, and we were listening to music and talking and sitting on a couch together and just talking. I didn't look at my phone until 3:30 the next afternoon, which is the first time this has ever happened to me as an adult. So I think it's finding the others and building the social capital that you and Mohit and Kijal are so expert at, even though you don't think you're expert at it. Building the social capital, finding the others who are loosely aware of what's coming and want to play a role. And you build those relationships first, and you expand outward from there and do all the things. And then, of course, we're going to need emergent governance models and pilots on how to do things. I think one of the biggest things we face is fear and apathy. And I don't know what to do. I don't know the answers. We have to try things. And some will fail, and some will be okay, and some will be, oh my God, that worked amazingly well. So again, I'm really reluctant to tell people, your colleagues and listeners in India, what to do. I don't know, but I think it's along the lines of preparing for um, a less stable energy, or more costly energy, less stable economy, and less stable environment, and play a role on something that you care about. But I think the foundation starts with social capital, and the foundation of social capital starts with human capital, yourself. Make sure that you are healed and have good food and exercise and sleep and meditation and breathing, because in this time, it is imperative to have kindness and empathy to others. But the very first step in that is to be kind to yourself. And I've had to learn this as well.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Nate. I was curious though, when you speak about islands of coherence and the third attractor and what you just shared, that we build social capital and we become a small, maybe an island. So how do you see us reaching out? How is all this going to come together? Or it's going to be emergent? Uh, what's going to happen?
It's going to be emergent. I think there's so many black swans that we can envision of things going badly, especially on the ecosystem or geopolitical front. Um, I think there are maybe some white swans that we can't quite envision. But how I could possibly see is that, so I have these 50 people, kind of my inner circle, and I like deeply trust them and like them and can share anything with them. And maybe there's another group like that 100 miles, and maybe there's 100 of those groups in my state, and then 1,000 groups in the United States in a few years. And then starting with 5 groups in India, and then 500 groups in India, and all of a sudden something happens that you wouldn't be able to expect, where there's a cross pollination of ideas and there's some change in consciousness, that a recognition, maybe artificial intelligence will, some subset of it will recognize that we're all connected and not separated, and that it will fight models and narratives that focus on individual uh, pursuit of individual wealth and power, and that we're all connected, including nature, and it spins narratives that way. I don't know, but I think to start your own island of coherence. I mean, this is one of the pieces of advice I give to my students. We're on a runaway train where the economic superorganism is shoveling fuel, mostly coal, into the engine. It is very difficult to fight that, because the power of the hierarchy and the status and the billionaires and the governments are locked into that, powering that train engine. But we can meet on the dining car during these times. And I, in my own life, have 3 distinct groups that I meet in the dining car. One is people that I'm intellectually aligned with. We look at models and charts and data and we discuss it. Another is people I just like hanging out with. I like to go in the woods and go for a bike ride, or go with my dogs, or watch a sporting event and have some beer. But they don't know about the meta crisis. And then another group is, these are the people that I'm rolling my sleeves up and actually doing work in the world to make the future better than the default. In my life, those are 3 different groups. But I think people listening, the first thing to do is find 2 or 3 people. If you like this podcast, find 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 people, listen to this podcast. Let's have a conversation about it. And you start to build your own mini island of coherence. And then maybe 2 years from now, there are lots of those islands of coherence. And then there's a new game move that becomes possible for us all that we can't envision today.
That would be amazing. And yes, thanks for that invitation. Thought I'll close this podcast with a few questions that you asked, Nate, which I love, and I've heard you ask them at different places. So, are you ready for some a couple of those questions?
Okay.
I thought the first question was the magic wand question, Nate. If you would have a magic wand or a wish, what would that be?
I think I would wish for every human to be able to feel what I felt in Oroville, India, especially near the end when I was leaving, to feel the feeling of community and love, and to be kind of walled off from the distractions and pressures of what we feel every day, at least in the global north in the United States. I felt it again 2 weeks ago with this community of people and the podcast, where like this is how humans used to be. We don't need a lot of gadgets and stuff. We need good food. We need music. We need laughter and trust and looking other humans in the eyes, um, and touch and stories. And my magic wand would be that everyone could feel, if only for a brief moment, what humans are capable of feeling without all the chaos and horror and tragedy and technology and supernormal stimuli and misinformation and all the things. Because once you know that we can feel that way, it gives you a little guiding light in your mind and in your heart that I want to work towards feeling like that more, and then all the repercussions on our behaviors and incentives and social structures that would then change as a result of that. I mean, that's kind of fanciful, maybe, but you asked on a magic wand.
It's no, it's beautiful and it'll ripple. It'll ripple. I think. I trust that more of that will happen. My last question, Nate, is anything that you shared which you would like to, but didn't kind of wasn't a part of this conversation. Any closing thoughts? Anything else that you'd like to conclude with?
Well, I've said quite a lot, Avi. You didn't talk that much. I I have a really good sense about what the three of you are trying to accomplish, and I think I am hopeful that the people of India can respond in unexpected ways to what's coming. And there is going to be suffering and there's going to be chaos. But there is this thread of human consciousness that is also riding shotgun with the meta crisis. And I think India has a role to play in that. And again, I don't want to be so arrogant as to profess that I have real good ideas on that. It's just a sense that what I witnessed in Tamil Nadu, there's some essence of humanity there, and in wider India that is doesn't exist elsewhere in the world. And tapping into that and exploring it and learning and growing and sharing with like-minded people. And don't expect everyone to sign up to be part of this story and this work, but the people that you do find, work hard with them, and become good, deep friends on the dining car. And as you know, I'm happy to help if I can.
And yes, and you have guided us so much and pointed and generally kind of helped us get our bearings. So gratitude for that. And thank you, Nate. Thank you for your time. It's precious time spent. And for all the viewers who got a taste of listening into you, I'm sure they'll all tune into the podcast, The Great Simplification. It's a chaotic world, and I think there are a few voices you can keep listening and tuning into for some signal. I see this as one of those. I see your voice as one of those. So thank you for being such a lovely co-traveler and yeah, and being so generous. Thank you.
Namaste, my friend. To be continued.
Yes, namaste.